Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello, podcast listeners. This is Cathy Mazak, and I am so excited about today's episode. So, if you're like me, you love a juicy, good, detailed, behind the scenes story. I'm always looking for the behind the scenes outtakes and things. Whenever I watch a movie, it's something I miss a lot from DVDs, right? They used to come with a lot more bonus content and behind the scenes. I love that. One of my favorite podcasts is How I Built This with Guy Raz. Love that podcast because you get to hear all of these really interesting behind the scenes stories about how businesses get built. So today I am bringing you what I think will be the comprehensive behind the scenes story of my business. That is this business that has created and brought to you this podcast now since 2019, the business that's been blogging since 2017, and the business that runs all the programs that we talk about on this podcast. Now, if you don't like business talk, if you don't like to hear people talk about money, if you don't like behind the scenes, then this is not the episode for you, because I'm actually going to tell you my revenue numbers each year since the company was founded. And all of this is because if you listened to last week's podcast episode, you'll know that we are changing the name of the company from my name to Scholar's Voice. Now, this means not just the name of the company changing, but we're doing it as part of what you would call in the business world, right? Like a brand change. We are changing from a business that is a solopreneur business, right? It hasn't been for a while, but a business that I started, in my off hours on my computer to what I hope is and will be continuing to develop as a full-fledged business in the world. And that change needed a new name, because the truth is that I am not the only person in this business anymore. And that's been true for quite a long time. So buckle up, because today is probably going to be a longer episode. We'll see how it lands. But I am going to be talking to you all about the trajectory of what is now our company called Scholar's Voice, how I founded it in 2017, what happened along the way, and why in 2023 we are doing this big brand revision. I can't wait to dig into all the juicy details with you. All right, before I get started on the story, I want to tell you a little bit about something that's coming up really soon that I want you to know about. So starting next week, we are going to be taking applications for a new pilot version of our Navigate program. Now, Navigate is what we call our signature program. The title of the program is Navigate Your Writing Roadmap. And we have been offering Navigate as a year-long program for the past year and a half or so. In fact, we just enrolled 35 new members in November into the year-long version of Navigate. Because we are doing so many changes as we become Scholar's Voice, one of the things that we wanted to do was really take a look at all the programs, and we wanted to look at them through the lens of really two main criteria. We wanted to make the programs more simple, and we wanted to make the programs more impactful. We think those two things are really related to each other, right? Like there is much impactfulness in simplicity, in clarity, in instead of like, a program that has a ton of stuff in it, a very streamlined, focused program that can get the clients who take that program the result in a shorter period of time. And we really think we can do this with Navigate. So we are doing something quite radical and we are taking a program that we've offered, wow, in so many different ways. And we are going to offer it as a 12-week program. This is going to have group coaching in it, weekly group coaching in the program, in addition to our core Navigate curriculum, which we are reorganizing, reordering, and revising for this pilot version. What we're looking for is 10 to 20 academics who want to do this new pilot version of Navigate. It will start, it's 12 weeks long. It'll start at the end of February and run until mid-May. Okay, so if you count out the weeks, that's how long it's going to be. And we're looking for people who have never done our Navigate program before. Now, if you're listening and you're like, wait, but I just joined Navigate in November and now you're changing it, or I did it before and this sounds really good, I want to do it again. Don't worry, there's going to be an opportunity for you to participate, but not in the pilot round. We're really looking to test some things in this revised curriculum and this revised format so that we can make sure that those are the things we want to do when we re-release the program in May. Okay, so don't worry. For May, those of you maybe you're in the Navigate alumni program, maybe you are currently just enrolled in Navigate, either from November's group or the May group, don't worry. There's going to be an opportunity for you to join the 12-week version of Navigate in May. For this round, we're looking for people who want to clear their publication pipelines and who really want to do it in a way that is maybe a little intense, but very effective, okay? Impactful and simple. So anyway, more details, many more details about that are coming in the next week. You're going to be hearing a lot of content about that new version of Navigate, including a new program promise and all the new format and everything and the price. Don't worry, you'll get all of that information. But I just wanted to let you know, because actually Navigate has a really important role in the story of our company. And I can't wait to tell you what we're going to do with it in 2023. So let's get started then. Without further ado, let's get started with the origin story of what is now Scholar's Voice. All right, if you are new to the podcast, I'm going to give you the couple sentence version of who I am and what our company is. So my name is Cathy Mazak, and I was a tenured full professor when I started this online business creating professional development programs for academic women and non-binary professors. So this is, where we are today, but it's also how we started. I really started out in 2017. I had gotten tenure, I had gotten full. And I think what I want to do is talk about kind of pre-2017 and a little bit of like kind of context about the founding of the business. And then I'm going to go through each year and do some highlights. I'm going to tell you how much money, top line revenue money we made each year from 2017 to the last numbers that just came in, which is 2022. The reason for that is I don't know if you follow any business podcasts or if you're interested in entrepreneurship at all, very few businesses, and I think even fewer businesses, women-owned businesses, make it to the $1 million mark. I think it's 1 or 2% of women-owned businesses make it to the $1 million in a year revenue mark. That is considered still a very small business. So just to give you a little bit of context, many of the businesses that that are small, a small business is still You could be a $20 million a year business and still be considered a small business, right? So we're talking about like in relative to that, like $1 million a year is rather small. But I wanted to give you a context because it is kind of like a turning point and a goal for many, many businesses. And when you're hearing revenue numbers, if you're not used to hearing revenue numbers, I just want to kind of give that to you as a little bit of a context. And no, we have not hit $1 million in a year, although we have made over the course of the years that we've been in business, which is 6 years, we're going into year 7, we have generated over $2.5 million in revenue over the course of the whole business. Okay, so that'll get more context here as we go on. So I'm going to divide the journey, the description of the journey into kind of pre-2017, and then I'll take you through each year of the business, just like what we did, what programs we introduced, how much money we made, what size our team was, and all of that. So it's really nitty gritty and behind the scenes details. So I hope you enjoy. All right, so let's see. In 2017, as I mentioned, was a mom of 3. I had become a full professor. I had founded a research center, the first qualitative research center on our campus. I had brought in over $500,000 in federal funding and in an English department, at least where I am or where I was at University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. That was like a really, really big deal. So I had brought in a lot of funding. I've made international collaborations and relationships with bilingualism researchers all over the world. And yeah, like things were going kind of trucking along nicely. Let's see what else happened. In 2014 or so, my publication kind of life really started to take off. I really hit on a research thread. It was a little bit of like what has turned into quite a wave of research around translanguaging, which is was like a new way to talk about bilingualism in classrooms. And I did research right at the beginning of when people were starting to use that word. And so I was able to really start to publish in a really niche-y kind of beautiful area that I really, really believed in and felt strongly about, and was developing this research program around translanguaging or, Spanish and English language use for learning in college classrooms, mostly college science classrooms. So that was my kind of niche-y little area. I had gotten published in the Journal of Bilingualism and Bilingual Education, got published in Anthropology and Education Quarterly, did 2 really lovely edited volumes, which in linguistics, edited volumes are, I mean, we can have a conversation about the why I do edited volumes in linguistics. I think they're certainly not peer-reviewed journal articles, but they count, right? Okay, they count. So between 2014, I would say, and 2017, like that I was really developing that line of research. And also, I had my 3rd baby and turned 40. So in 2015 is when I had Mariela, who is our youngest. And I had told my husband that we were not having any babies after 40. And so I got pregnant when I was 39 and had her when I was 40. So that was 2015. Now, a beautiful thing about Puerto Rico is that the maternity leave policy is actually very nice at the university. So I was able to take off like a whole semester plus a summer. So like a lot, I was able to really take time and be with each one of my children when they were born. And I don't think that maternity leaves are sabbaticals, right? Because they're not. And I just want to say that I think one of the reasons that I was able to be successful in my career is that I took them as time away. Like it's not a sabbatical. It's not that I didn't work, because absolutely my body was recovering from pregnancy and birth. And, I was mothering an infant, but I was not thinking about academics or anything to do with work for the whole time I was on maternity leave. I didn't answer emails. I didn't read anything like that was like academic. I completely checked out for my 3 maternity leaves. And actually, I think that really helped me to to keep going as long as I did, in academia. So let's see, I don't have the timeline completely perfect, but let's say around 2015, when I had Mariela and I was on maternity leave. Let's see, before that, actually. So before that, I, you're going to laugh, maybe. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast. So before that, we were trying to make ends meet. We were trying to make ends meet with our student loans and our 2 cars and our house and our 2 children. And we my husband kind of had this hobby of exercise and supplements and all of these things. And so because he was spending a lot of money in this certain company, which I'm not going to mention, but on exercise programs and supplements, because he was spending a lot of money, we looked at how much he was spending and decided, oh, well, I think I'll become, a coach in that company. They called it a coach, but it's really a salesperson, right? In that company in order to, get the discount on the supplements and things. This company is what they call an MLM, a multi-level marketing company. And as we joined for the discount, and then I was like, well, maybe I can make some money here and we need a little extra money. So let's see if I can run this as a little side business. And as many people who join MLMs think this, right? I'll run it as a little side business and I'll make a few $100 extra a month. If I made $500 or $800 extra a month, it would be really amazing and would help our family out a lot, right? That would be the mortgage. So fantastic. So I did that. And I did that before I was pregnant, during my pregnancy, and for some amount of time while I was on maternity leave. So if you are unfamiliar with the world of multi-level marketing and this company in particular, what I was doing was basically on social media, I would talk about my own fitness journey and I would, recommend programs to people on social media, right? Mostly Facebook at that time. And, so I was doing that. And one of the things that they recommend you doing is get your friends together, have them buy the program, and then have a Facebook group where you basically are posting every day and having people it's like an accountability group kind of thing. So I was doing that and I was creating all kinds of content inside of these Facebook groups. I was creating content on Facebook and I was, trying to make this extra side money through this multi-level marketing company. So unsurprisingly, I never really made any money, not enough to offset the costs of buying the supplements and buying the programs and all of those things. And also, but I realized I was I was creating these little online communities and that people loved them and that was great, but it was never going to make me a ton of money. In the process of doing that, I enrolled in a course in personal branding. Yeah, in personal branding. It through my university's continuing education, school. So it costs $50 or $80. And I was thinking I would do it to try to grow this little multi-level marketing fitness business, quote unquote. It wasn't really a business thing that I was doing. But when I took that course, 2 things happened. One was I was a new mom. Well, I wasn't a new mom, but I had a new baby. And so I was able to, it was an online course. So I was able to take, watch, I'd never taken an online course before. So this was 2015, 2016. I had never taken an online course before. And so, it sounds crazy now, right? That sounds really ridiculous now. But think about 2016, right? It was not, it was a different world. So I took this online course and I was like, this is really neat because I can watch the content at night after the baby goes to bed, or I can watch it in little short, bursts throughout the day. And that was one thing that happened when I took that program. And then the second thing that happened was I was like, why in the world am I spending so much time trying to sell fitness programs. I'm not like even that into fitness, right? Like I had good success with the programs and I liked healthy eating and like that was all fine, but I was not an expert in that. I just, was able to kind of attract people to me and talk to them as humans. And that made me okay at sales for fitness programs. Like not something I even look back on and I'm not even very proud of that. Just like I did it. It's just true that I did it, right? So as I was doing this personal branding course, I was like, wait a minute. Like I sell these like a fitness video and I make $15 and I do all this work to create these like accountability groups and do all this social posting and all the sales and attraction marketing. And I make $15. Like it seems silly. I am a well-trained professional. So taking that online course made me think two things. One, online courses, that's really cool. Two, I have an expertise area that maybe could be monetized. And it's not through somebody else's multi-level marketing business. So I started to kind of delve into the world of online courses. In around 2016, when I started doing this, I would say that there were some big names in the online course world. There's still kind of big names. So Amy Porterfield, who has a business podcast called Online Marketing Made Easy, Pat Flynn, who has a business podcast called Smart Passive Income. And I think even from that very start, I had started following Mariah Cause, who was all about like creating online courses as well. So these people were teaching how to put out content in the world. At that moment, it was through a blog, right? Like through writing a blog, and then create a course for the people who followed you online or who found your blog. And so I started thinking like, well, and one of the things that anybody tells you when you're starting a business is to think about like, what's the thing that people ask you about all the time, right? They're like, how did you do that? Or, wow, it's so interesting you did this. Could be something that could turn into a business idea. And for me, especially at that moment in my life, I had just done this maternity leave. I had all these publications come out. I had 2 books and all these articles out. It looked like I wrote them over the maternity leave. Like my baby was born in September 2015. And a lot of I had submitted like most of those. No, 2016. She was born in 2016. Sorry, baby. So I had submitted much of that like right before I went on maternity. And so of course they come out in publication, 7, 8, 9 months later. Right. So, and that was my lovely maternity leave was long. So a lot of people were asking me like, well, how do you teach a 4-4 load, which was what my teaching load was at University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. How do you teach a 4-4 load? Have 3 kids? Like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you still doing research and publishing? So I thought about lots of different like possibilities for like a blog. I don't even want to call it like a business idea at that point, because what I was really looking for was like a blog idea. Like what's something that I could write a short article about every week. And I landed on this question that people ask me, which was like, how do you get your writing done with all that teaching and the parenting and all of that stuff? And I realized I remember being in bed and with a notebook and brainstorming blog ideas, like blog title ideas for a writing and publishing in academia blog. And I wish I could find that notebook. I'll have to dig around and see if I can find it. But basically, it was like someone turned on a faucet. And I just had so many ideas and so many things I wanted to write about and so many things I wanted to say. So that is really how what is now Scholar's Voice was born. Back in 2016, when I was thinking, like trying to figure out something to kind of make a little side money to help us make ends meet. Okay, so I got the idea and I started blogging. So I bought my name, right, CathyMazak.com, and started blogging there all about writing and publishing advice for women professors. Like that's how I really started. I even thought at the beginning I was talking to moms, but in the end, it was really women. And then the audience evolved to include women and non-binary professors as the business grew, right? So I took, so in 2016, I would say in like September through December 2016, I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to build this blog. I'm going to get started. I'm going to build a course-based business that I can run while I'm also being a professor, right? To help others to get their writing done and to, put out their publications. So I hired as a personal coach. I remember I spent $1,000 or $1,200 for like, I don't know, 8 or 12 weeks of coaching with the woman who was the teacher of that original continuing ed course that was about personal branding. And so I hired her as like on a one-on-one coach for a one-on-one coaching program. Since I was making $0, it felt like $1,000 felt like a lot of money to invest. But she really helped me kind of outline everything, name the company in that moment, which she really thought, since especially was into personal branding, like she was like, well, it should probably just be your name. And talk about like how to set up the beginnings of this online business. So in February 2017, I incorporated, and I think I was probably blogging before then, and just really, trying to produce content online that was valuable and helpful to people. I mostly just used Facebook. So I made a Facebook business page and I would do lives on my Facebook business page. I would blog and then I would share my blog post out on Facebook and in the groups that I was in. And one of the groups that I was in was called Academic Mamas. I don't know if it still exists on Facebook, but it was tens of thousands of people large. And I would just write a blog post and post it in there. And since I was really talking about many things that were, relevant to that Facebook group, I would get people to sign up for my email list, which I would just like email my blog posts out every week, right? And come to free webinars that I did and that kind of stuff. So that's how I started growing the business in 2017. And in the summer of 2017, I put out my first version of Navigate. It was called the Academic Women's Writing Roadmap. That was the original name of the program. And it was a course. So it was a digital course with recorded videos. And I think maybe that summer, I think maybe that summer I offered it with like 3 tiers. And one of the tiers had one-on-one calls with me, and the price points were very much lower than they were today. When I first offered it, it was $297 total for the course. And I think the one-on-one version was $997 that had one-on-one coaching in it. And there was some intermediate version probably in there somewhere. And I think that the first time I launched that course, which would later become Navigate, I made $14,000. And it felt like I had hit the lottery. It was like, what? I can make $14,000 from doing this thing, which is so much fun. And I did it all from my computer at my home in my off hours, like I didn't need to show up to give class. I was able to create exactly the curriculum I wanted, exactly the length I wanted. And so it was a very, very liberating and exciting feeling. So in 2017, I made around $25,000. And that was mostly with Navigate, which was then called the Academic Women's Writing Roadmap. But I also did a couple of other things. I did a a virtual, what I used to call like what now it's called is the Writing Sprint Blueprint. But what it used to be was the virtual writers retreat. And it was basically, it's very different as Writing Sprint Blueprint, but basically it was like a 2-week writing sprint, like a guided writing sprint. And now we do those inside our programs, and we have a kind of do-it-yourself version called Writing Sprint Blueprint. But that was like my first program. I think it cost $97 when I did it live. Anyway, in 2017, that's really it. I think I did a writing retreat. So I think I also might have done a writing retreat that year with just like 3 or 4 people. And the total that we made was about, we being really me, was about $25,000. During that year, I really didn't hire anybody. I believe, I'm just looking at my expense report while we're talking. Yeah, I hired Esther Littlefield, who at that time was like an online business manager. And now she's my podcast producer. That's why I mentioned her name. So still working with Esther after all these years, but in a very different capacity. And what she would do was like, she helped me set up like the technical side of the business. So like I built the original website, by the way. I built it myself on WordPress and set up my original version of my original email marketing software. But during that time, she would help me with launches. She helped me load blog posts up and helped me with automations and things like that. So she did some of like the technical stuff and in a very contractor kind of way. Like we just was like, here, I need this done. And I think she was on like a little retainer by the end of 2017, but that was it. So then in 2018, I'm trying to think, so the other thing contextually, what was going on in 2017, especially in like March of 2017, there was a big university strike at my university in the whole University of Puerto Rico system. So some of you may know the Ley Promesa, which is basically where the US put a fiscal control board to control the finances of Puerto Rico. And one of the things that Fiscal Control Board insisted on was a $450 million cut to the University of Puerto Rico system. So University of Puerto Rico system had been funded off of like the general tax fund. The Fiscal Control Board didn't want that. They wanted to make it more like a US state schools model and basically said, you have to cut $450 million. So in 2017, things were getting like really rough. They had been getting rough for a while, really for 10 years, because I think I moved to Puerto Rico in 2007. So 2006, 2007. So the whole time I had been a professor, like things were going downhill slowly, but it really got scary in 2017. And what I mean by scary is we were both professors at the university, and I was just wondering if someday we wouldn't get paid. And as many of you probably are, we were living paycheck to paycheck between our student loans and our mortgage and the cars and all the things. And so it was really like scary to think that we didn't have any other source of income. And that was another reason for starting the business, was to like develop another source of income that, you know, could help us out, help us get out of debt so we're in a better position, and also just kind of diversify income streams, right? That all of our money wasn't coming just from, you know, the Puerto Rico as we were public employees, right? As university professors at University of Puerto Rico. So that's 2017. Okay. In 2018, we continued to do kind of basically those programs that I mentioned before. And when I say we, I really mean me. We still had what was called at that moment the Academic Women's Writing Roadmap. I was also starting to do some kind of one-on-one coaching. I did some different iterations of one-on-one coaching. We just try different things. I did do a writing retreat. I developed the Organize Your Academic Life course, which we still give to people who enroll in Amplify or Elevate. I'm just looking at we still did the virtual writers retreat. So we were doing different things. The big moneymaker was still Navigate. And that year we went from making $25,000 to making $100,000. And so these numbers I'm giving you are top line revenue numbers. I don't want to get into all like the total expenses and taxes and everything like that, because I don't think it's useful unless you're a business person, who really wants like all that level of detail. But basically, in 2018, I was still working my full-time job as a professor. And then on the side and on the weekends, I would be working on the business. At that moment, I'll say, like, quite candidly, that I was so excited to be working on the business and not as excited about my university job. Like, as I mentioned before, budget cuts were happening. The message we were getting from the university was like, just be quiet and teach your classes, like not stop applying for external funds, but we used to have different incentives to apply for grant money that they cut. It just started to get like this really like a very unfun place to work. But it was what it was. We were all suffering through it together. And on the side, I had this thing that really lit me up, which was my business. So I was still blogging, written blogs at that point. I was doing Facebook Lives. I'm not sure when I started the Facebook group. It might have been in 2018. At some point in 2018 or early 2019, I had a Facebook group called I Should Be Writing. I probably started that pretty early. And basically that grew to over 16,000 people before we finally closed it. So I would go live there, posting my blog post around, doing free webinars, and then of course selling these different programs. And like I said, in 2018, I made $104,000 it looked like. In terms of expenses, we did, I have different kinds of expenses, but in terms of like team, I had Esther as my online business manager. And I think in 2018 or soon into early 2019, I hired LaToya, and she came in as an executive assistant, but developed later into an online business manager. And as Esther moved more into podcast production, LaToya kind of took over the online business management part of the business. So I want to say, like, throughout every moment that I've been in business, I have had a business coach, either through programs or one-on-one coaching. I've always invested like a pretty good chunk of change in coaching. That's one of the reasons I believe in coaching so much, because it's helped me so much. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that as because I still had my university salary at this point, I was able to invest in business coaching to continue to develop as a business owner and a course creator. Yeah, so that's 2018. It wasn't a bad year at all. It was pretty good. And increasingly, as we head into 2019, things started getting, I was getting itchy. I was getting itchy to leave the university job. I think a lot of it had to do with like, I just loved writing the blog so much. I just loved creating courses and content and programs, and I loved coaching. It was so much fun. It was like all the good parts of teaching, but with no grading, like, and no textbooks. Like, I had to make it all up as I went along and create it really myself. And so I think that's why I started to get more and more attracted to the idea of leaving my university job and going full-time in the business. So in 2019, I think I was definitely like looking towards making an exit. I joined a program that helped me further expand and develop the business. So when I joined that program, that in 2019 is when I launched Amplify, which is our pre-tenure group coaching program. So I launched Amplify I think I started selling it at like the end of May 2019. I'm not exactly sure, around there somewhere. I just know that May 2019 was like a really big revenue month. And overall for 2019, we made almost $400,000, which seems just kind of ridiculous at this, like right now, because I don't know how I did that. Like, I don't know how I worked my job and also, pretty much put that program out. Well, I do know how. Here's how. I'm talking about fiscal years, not academic years. So January, February, March, April, May was when I was still working my job. That's the last time I taught university classes was May 2019. So I actually did so well in May 2019 that I took a leave of absence without pay from my job. So we launched. So let's see, at that point, I had my coaches, whoever I was paying for coaching. I had that's for my own coaching, right? For my own business coaching as an expense. I had Esther, who was, I think, well, Esther was still like the online business manager. LaToya had come in as an executive assistant. And then in 2019, when I launched Amplify, the first round of it, I was still the only person delivering any of the programs. So as we were successful with Amplify, like I was like, gosh, well, there's no way I can do this amount of delivery and also work my full-time professor job. It just didn't make any sense. So I, took the leave of absence without pay officially starting, I guess, probably July 1, 2019, and went on the hunt for coaches to help me deliver, particularly our Amplify program. So that's how I found Gina and Rocio. So you'll be hearing more from them in the next few weeks on the podcast. But basically, I hired them, I think in August 2019. I found them both in a Facebook group called Academics Say Goodbye. And they both came on very part-time, just a few hours a week to start to help deliver the Amplify program. And that was one of the most amazing things that I was able to do, right? And that we was bring in other people to do program delivery. Because then instead of me creating the programs by myself, then I had Gina and Rocio who were helping to co-create the programs. I always think of the programs as co-created with the participants of the program, but then to also have these other people who were doing one-on-one coaching, who were doing group coaching, who really got to know the clients, could help make the programs better. That was amazing. Also, September 2019, we launched the podcast. And I think that the podcast has been such a wonderful way to reach people, to get to really, really get people who listen to the podcast tell me that they feel like they know me. And that happens to me all the time when I actually get on the phone with someone to talk about enrolling in one of our programs and they'll be like, oh, I feel like I know you because I listen to you every week. And so it's a little strange, but also I feel the same way about the people, the podcasters who I listen to. So it's a very intimate medium, and it's not very distraction-y, right? There's not that news feed feeling on Facebook and everything. So I love podcasting. I'm so glad I started the podcast. The podcast really, once I started doing the podcast in September 2019, I stopped blogging in terms of written blogs. That's something we're going to bring back in 2023. So be on the lookout for that. That's exciting. So 2019, I started the podcast. Gina and Rocio were helping deliver our Amplify cohort that started in September. And so now, instead of being a team of just me or just me with Esther and LaToya helping, I had me, Esther, LaToya, and Gina and Rocio. And I think that's why we did $400,000 in 2019, because we really grew. We grew in clients, but we also grew in visibility with the podcast, and we grew as a team, right? So then I needed to be able to make the money to because I pulled the salary rug out from under myself, right? But also I needed to pay my team. So it was I really had to make the money. I really had to make sure we hit our goals because we had the team to support. Okay. So then actually at the end of 2019, we created and launched Elevate, which is our mid-career program. So we talked to so many mid-career academics at that point and really developed this program, launched it. And I think we had 6 or 9, 10 people do it the first time we did it, which was February 2020. So we headed into 2020 with quite a range of programs. We had our Navigate program, which I think maybe by 2020 was called Navigate. It's funny because I consulted a naming expert. Like I hired somebody to give me naming ideas for the company. It was a really interesting experience and she was amazing. She's a writer and it was really fun. And so I didn't love any of the company names that she came up with, but she was like, "Oh, you could call that Navigate." Because I had Amplify, Elevate, and then I said, I have this thing called the Writing Roadmap. I had taken the academic women's part of it off. It was just too long of a title, and so yeah. So she was like, "Well, you can call that Navigate. That would fit in." And it did fit in so beautifully. So then we actually, I think in 2020, we trademarked Navigate your writing roadmap. That's a registered trademark. And so that became kind of the official name of that program. So I had Navigate, we had Amplify, we had Elevate. It was, and as I will talk about for 2023, it's just a lot of programs, but we were all home. And in 2020, I think that Gina came. There was a moment that Rocio was full-time as well, that they both were full-time. But I think Gina became a full-time coach for us in 2020. So she had worked for the Vermont Humanities Council and she decided to leave that position and come work for us full-time. So 2020 happened, which was we grew a lot in 2020. Some of the highlights were, we did this webinar, I remember, that was about writing in times of crisis. And we had, it was a free webinar and we had 1,200 people sign up, which is just wow. So anyway, 2020, I still continued to join different business training programs. And some things happened in 2020 into 2021 from the business side that I might as well say, because we, in case you want to know, we really tried to grow. I really thought, okay, we've got our programs, we've got our great coaches. I'm delivering less and less because the coaches are delivering more and more of the program components. So now what we really need to do is ramp up marketing, right? That was my thought. In 2020, I think because many online businesses, obviously many businesses did badly in 2020. It was a painful year in so many ways. Many online businesses and online course businesses did rather well in 2020. We grew from $400,000 in top line revenue in 2019 to $667,500 in top line revenue in 2020. At that point, basically, we had Esther was our podcast producer. So she wasn't our online business manager anymore. She was our podcast producer. LaToya came on as our online business manager. I don't know if it was 2020. Was it? I think so. I hired Paulette, I hired her as an executive assistant. So basically LaToya got promoted. Paulette came in as executive assistant. Yeah, that's right. She came, that's when we hired Paulette. She's had her 3-year anniversary. I can't believe it. It's amazing. So we were growing as a team. So we had LaToya, Paulette, Gina, Rocio, and then we had different contractors, and one of them was Esther. So one of the things that was horrible about 2020 was that we were supposed to have I'll say the horrible thing. We were supposed to have a really big being 20 people, I think 18 to 20 people. We bought out this beautiful small inn in Ocean Park in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And we were going to have a beautiful writing retreat in July 2020. And basically we sold that retreat in September of 2019. It was sold out really fast. And we had to cancel and give all the money back. And that really sucked. Let's be honest, that was terrible. We did sneak in a short retreat for our Amplify folks at the very beginning of 2020 in January, end of January. So that was great. But then that has scared me off from doing in-person retreats. Since then, it was really financially difficult to handle in terms of cash flow. So anyway, so 2020 was like we increased in revenue. We grew by 50%, I guess, which was nice. And we also brought on a lot more full-time employees when we brought in Paulette, and Latoya was full-time at that point as well, and Gina. So then 2021. So as I mentioned, I was like, how are we going to grow? Let's grow marketing. And so we brought in a marketing assistant. We brought in a customer service person. It was like we grew the team a lot in marketing, but our revenue didn't really grow. So in 2021, we made $735,000, but we had this like rather large team, like pretty dang big team. Oh, we also hired Thea, who's a coach with us now as well, part-time at some point in 2021. And we had this team of like 7 or 8 people, and we were not bringing in enough new revenue or more revenue to support that team size. That was the first time in the business where like there were months I couldn't pay myself, and it was scary. It was scary. So, but that's part of being a business owner and the risks that you have to take. In 2021, we really pretty much ran the programs that we ran in 2022. So we ran Navigate, Amplify, and Elevate. And it wasn't that we did badly. I mean, we did grow somewhat. We just hired what turned out to be too many people and didn't see enough of return on investment on those hires. In 2021, we also shut down the Facebook group and took any of our program groups off of Facebook. I have a complicated relationship with Facebook. Basically, it's a love-hate. Well, now it's just a indifference. But in 2021, it was a love-hate. Love because it was a great platform for us. We did this inside of our Facebook group. We did a live video show. So every Tuesday at noon, I think we went live, and it wasn't just me, it was the coaches as well. And so we got to create some pretty cool content in there for our audience. And also, if you are in or have ever managed a very large Facebook group, it can go off the rails, usually while you're sleeping, without like some pretty strict moderation. So we took a look at like what we wanted. I took a really hard look. And we talked about it as a company too. Like we were like, well, where does community happen? So one of the things is like one of our company values is community. And so it was like, well, why would we shut down? If one of our company values is community, why would we shut down the 16,000 person Facebook group that a lot of people feel like is a great online community? Well, the reason that we shut it down was because we wanted to create more intimate community, and we wanted it to happen inside of our programs. We wanted to be able to put all of our community energy into people who were in our programs, not people who were in the Facebook group who might never join our programs. And so that was a strategic decision, and it was so liberating to close the Facebook group. It was like, it felt so right. I was so happy. I was like, yay, we're finally off of Facebook. Around the same time in 2021 was when Zuckerberg announced Meta. And I'm sure that there are great reasons for the metaverse, and that there are some things about it that could really be helpful to humanity. I was like, really? We're going to live more of our lives online? I was like, no, feeling really resistant to that. We had tried a pretty aggressive Facebook ads strategy in 2021 and spent a lot of money on Facebook ads, but weren't getting like the same kind of quality leads. And so we were like, well, how do we want people to find us? We want people to find us through the podcast. Our best clients come in and they say, my friend recommended your podcast and I love the podcast. So we decided that that's where all of our energy was going to go. It was going to go into the podcast. And then if we want to build community, we are doing it inside the programs. I think in 2021 was when, I don't know if we started it in 2020. we had our momentum program, and our momentum program was like a low priced co-writing membership where people could come in and we had co-writing times and things. And we phased that program out also, I guess, in the end of 2021. Yeah. Around the same time we phased the group out. And part of it was just like, we were spread too thin. We had too many programs and we needed to really concentrate our energies better. Also, we had like a rocky, in the end, the year turned out well, but 2021 was like a rocky revenue year that I didn't want to experience again. So we cut some things because I didn't want to spend money on them, because I was like, okay, I can't have another rough revenue year. All right. So 2022. So in November 2021, we closed the Facebook group. We also closed our momentum program. Although people who were in it could stay in it until November 2022. So it really, really closed just a couple months ago. So 2022, in 2022, we still ran, we were running momentum, but we had kind of closed it, kind of fused it with Navigate and made Navigate a year-long program. So we had Navigate, Amplify, and Elevate, and we had LaToya left the company in 2021. So we had Paulette step into the online business manager role. She is we call her the operations and finance manager. Oh, at some point in there, in 2021, I think as well, we hired Yulia, and she really saves me a lot of time because she does much of our writing. So our marketing writing and our emails and stuff that go out, Yulia writes. And she plans this content. Like, she's the one who says like, okay, here's what we're talking on the podcast about for the next 15 weeks or whatever. So she does content planning and writing. And so we have Yulia, she's pretty much full-time. We have Gina, who's full-time. We have Thea and Rocio. And this year I hired the lovely Teresa, who is a personal assistant for me. So I don't have an executive assistant anymore, but I have a personal assistant, and Teresa does a lot of executive assistant type stuff. So she's in my inbox, so that Paulette is just doing the business emails, not my kind of personal emails. So we got rid a lot of those marketing people that we hired in 2021 exited the business, and the only person we brought back was Teresa, or brought in was Teresa, and that was in end of July, beginning of August 2022. So it was like still pretty recently. In 2022, we made $774,000. A little better than 2021, but with fewer expenses because we had fewer personnel. We still sold the 3 programs, and so now we are up to date. So let me tell you a little bit. We're going to get more into this in a future podcast episode. So now we are, 2022 has passed and it's January 2023, and we have announced our new company name, which is Scholar's Voice. That has been in the works for over a year. We landed on the name about a year ago and filed trademark paperwork for the name. And mostly because, for different reasons. One of the reasons is that I was almost completely out of any program delivery. So what happens is then that I'm doing all the marketing, outward facing stuff, right? Like, I'm the main voice on the podcast. I'm the person doing webinars. I'm the person signing the emails, and all of that stuff. And then you get into the programs, and the people giving you the programs are a different set of people. They are Gina, Rocio, and Thea. So I really we wanted to better align the outside vision of the company with the inside vision. And we also, over the course of from 2020 to 2022, we really did a lot of work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in the process of doing that, we wrote a values statement. We created a structure for our business, which it's not completely non-hierarchical, but it is not represented in a hierarchy. It's represented in a Venn diagram. We have created definitions for things inside of our business that feel really good to us. Like our definition of growth is different than what the typical business definition of growth is, and those kinds of things. So we really wanted the outside vision of the company to align better with what had been happening internally. And that's why we decided to rename the company. You'll notice that for right now, things say Scholar's Voice with Cathy Mazak. That's because, a lot of people do know my name. And so if they're searching for my name, I don't want them to land on Scholar's Voice and then be like, who's this? like, oh no, she's here. Like, this is her company. um, so that's why we're keeping that, at least for a while, for some kind of transition period. What else? Oh, my book came out in 2022. Yay. So that was another kind of cool thing that happened. Anyway, we're trying to align this outer voice. We really worked on our branding. We worked on who do we want to be in the world? And the company became bigger than me, right? It's not just me. It's not just about me. It's really about the hundreds and hundreds of clients that we've helped. It's about this team that we have co-creating the programs with the clients. And it's so much about voice, and not just my voice. It's really about voices and about your voice and how we can support you in making your voice louder and more influential and more impactful in your field. So in 2023, there's a lot of new things happening. We're getting the new company name set up, new logo, new colors, new website. Our new website is going to be so beautiful. I hope by the time this episode comes out, I think it should be out and debugged. We're going to be doing more. We're actually going to be doing on the podcast next week. You're going to start to hear some bonus episodes that are more raw, a little less produced, but still here in your podcast feed. So more podcast episodes. There's going to be more voices on the podcast. So you'll be able to hear more from our coaches and from different members of our community. There's going to be blogging, like written blog posts. We're revising blog posts that were popular. We're updating them with our kind of latest thoughts. And we are doing some major program revisions. To that end, I will mention again, and you'll get more details about this next week if you listen to the podcast and if you're on our email list. We are running a pilot version of Navigate in a 12-week format that has group coaching in it. So more on that on the podcast very soon. It's going to be an application-only program, just like Amplify and Elevate. You're going to have to apply to join. We're very carefully curating the community. And you're going to see just so much focus on writing and publishing to make your career better, which of course is what we do here anyway. But we're really getting more streamlined with our programming. I'll officially announce here that we have put our Amplify program on hold. So we are finishing up this current Amplify cohort, which finishes at the end of February. And then we are not planning on running Amplify, which is our pre-tenure program, again in 2023. We instead are going to be revising that program to bring it back in probably a new format in 2024. And if you're listening and you've made it all the way to the end of this episode, our Elevate program starts really soon. It starts at the very, very end of January. Official kind of first week is the week of February 1, and runs until the end of July. And then we will not be offering that again for a while as well. So I'm really excited about all the changes. I'm really excited about Scholar's Voice. I'm really excited about bringing you a lot of new content on the podcast. We had done a lot of re-releases last year, partly because we were trying to get our act together, partly because they did well, like re-releases were doing well in terms of downloads. But you're going to hear a lot of new content coming up, and I just can't wait. I can't wait. Thank you so much. If this was interesting to you, please just drop us a note and let us know. I love a behind the scenes. So you really got one today with this very long podcast episode. But I've never talked about revenue on the podcast before. I think it's interesting. To me, it's interesting. And I'm very proud. I'm very, very proud of having built a company. It's not something I ever thought that I would do. I really thought I was going to be an academic for my whole life. But I can truly say now that I built a company and I'm building a company, right? We're still in the process of building it. I thank you for participating in that. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.